are minor issues in comparison to Dead Space's largest issue, which is traversal and streaming stutter. Based upon what I can see, Dead Space suffers from frequent, repeatable, and unpreventable frame time spikes when the character moves around the game world. It appears that when the player character crosses invisible boundaries in the map, different sections ahead and adjacent to the player will load behind the closed doors. This causes a stutter and a frame time spike nearly each time, and it occurs with specific patterns all over the game world. For example, watch this. The first time I enter this room on a Core i9-1200K with an RTX 4090, I will walk over to the corner, which will load an area presumably behind the closed door there, and there's a large frame time spike to 150 milliseconds or so. It's distracting. From this point, I will circle back around and go back into that same corner again. And you will see a similar frame time spike occurring at the exact same time, at the exact same location when I cross an invisible threshold. But the second time I do it, it is much smaller than the first, here spiking to 33 milliseconds. This is the basic behavior I usually see. The first time you reach an area, the frame time spike is larger. But if you stay in the same area and cross that same threshold again, the frame time spike tends to be smaller, but still very visible. On the face of it, it might not be that bad, but it really happens all over the place in the Dead Space remake, and it most definitely heavily intrudes on the gameplay experience when just walking around. It robs the game of its otherwise impeccable atmosphere in those moments when a stutter occurs. And it happens frequently, like I'm saying. Sometimes it happens every few meters depending upon how many doors are in the area. I find it confusing though that the game loading causes any stutter at all actually, as you cannot actually see the areas being loaded in. They're behind doors. And these doors have very slow animations to open. So why are these areas that cannot be seen that are loading with such intensity that they impact the playable smoothness on the critical path frame time? Why aren't they loading more slowly and bit by bit without an impact on frame time? I'm not sure why, but one thing is for certain, the intensity and frequency of these spikes in frame time increase the less powerful your PC is. When I was playing the game at my optimized settings on a Ryzen 5 3600 with an RTX 2060 Super, it honestly did feel and look pretty awful at times just wandering around with those constant dips and stutters. In that one room that I showed off earlier on the 4090 and 1200K, the behavior was even worse on this mid-range PC. Instead of 33.3 millisecond frame time spikes every time I would return to that corner, I saw frame time spikes that could be in excess of 100 milliseconds or so every time I would go to that corner. The issue I have with these stutters is that there's nothing you can do about them as a player on any platform actually to alleviate them. But the way it currently works, I imagine it will only be able to be cleaned up by a hypothetically much faster PC CPU from the future that just doesn't exist.